The Colorado Authors League presents The Cal Zone, the League's official podcast. Welcome to a place for tasty conversation about books, art, and more, all created by members of the Colorado Authors League. Here's your host, Tricia Copeland.
Welcome to the Cal Zone. Today we have Anna Blake. She's a memoir writer and a poet. I'm super excited to learn more about writing memoirs. I've never done nonfiction writing. So welcome, Anna.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
What do you think the hardest part of writing a memoir is?
Well, that's an interesting first question. And I'll say this. I don't know, because I think it's easy. And the reason I think it's easy is I just don't think that there's anything more interesting, engaging, funny, emotionally profound than real life. I think everything we write, even fantasy and science fiction, is based in real life because that's what we know. And so I think it's about sitting down and starting to write it. And for instance, you might think, let's say you're having a hard time getting started and you want to write something about something that happened in your childhood. So it's really easy. You close your eyes and you remember what the room was like. Something as inane as that, something that small. So you start to remember what the room was like and you describe it. And the thing about memoir is once you start describing the surroundings, the story unfolds in your head, which I think is how fiction writers write also.
I agree with that. I definitely see my things in my head, but for me, writing a memoir would be so vulnerable. It would be much scarier.
Well, yeah, it's serious, but I think we live in this world where you might ask yourself, why would a no one like me write a memoir, and who would ever care or want to read it? Who cares about my silly, insignificant life? And I believe that that's a really good question. And the answer is nobody's got an insignificant life. And when my first memoir came out, I got, dozens and dozens of emails privately saying you wrote about my life. And the public response was the same. And maybe the problem is this. Maybe we all want to think that we are the only people who have ever faced this challenge in our life, whatever that challenge was. But the truth is we're not. And I remember, on CBS, there used to be this segment where somebody would go to a small town somewhere and open a phone book and put their finger on a number and dial, and they'd go to that house and ask that person if they had a story to tell, and everyone did. And interesting and profound and inspiring stories. One of the things that happened to me, when I had a book itching to get out, a memoir itching to get out, like a lot of us do. And I decided I wasn't a good enough writer yet to do it justice. And so I started writing a blog. And on my blog, I gave myself writing exercises, and some of it was memoir. And some was what I would call creative fiction. There were a few different things, some how-to. And 5 years later, I wrote the book. The book came out, and then I started to get, I'm a horse trainer. I started to get invitations from other countries to come and do clinics there. So that's because I thought my small and insignificant life was worth writing about. And then at horse clinics, where I would least expect it, people ask me, well, would you add a writing workshop on? And my business plan is a simple one. I just say yes. So I said yes. Between you and me, I had never actually been to a writing workshop. So I thought about what might work. and and I've probably given 20 or 30 of them now. And the thing that amazes me is every single person wrote way better than you would have expected. And the writing was vulnerable and funny and important. And I think, you know, we have these inner voices that talk us down, not just writers, in all parts of our life. And, we have to learn to shut that voice up, because the truth is we can write. And the truth is, we fear judgment. But if you don't write, that's not the solution to not feeling judgment. The solution is to say, my voice matters. And I think that that's true in every genre we write. But for me, it starts with memoir. And even the poetry that I write is memoir poetry. And so, yeah, I don't think I think it's hard to let yourself start. But I think the stories are right there to write. And I think it's not just our family that would be interested.
Yeah, I like that vision of, you're right, like we are much more connected. We have much more in common with other people than we think they do. And just starting small, just starting it all is going to help you, because that's how I feel when I'm writing too. Like if I just start one sentence, it leads to the next sentence and the next sentence. So if you just start, even starting small, that's starting, and that's going to build confidence. And you talked about, was that how you feel your memoir was transformative, or memoir writing is transformative?
I think that we, on a bad day, feel like we are isolated. And I think for people who write, because we are both, I'm thinking where we write, and clearly it's a room that we're alone in. Writing is isolating in its own right. And then I think as humans, most of us are introverts, and it's hard to want to involve ourselves in the world, when the truth is we are involved, and we are more alike than we are different. And I feel like, I think everybody should write a book. And of course, I think everybody should write a memoir, but whatever. Once you write a book, it's transformative to do the experience of it. It's transformative because it is a huge accomplishment. To just write it is a huge accomplishment. I didn't expect, when I wrote my book, I thought a few of my friends would read it. I thought I would publish it. By the time I got, by the time I got to the end of it, I really wanted it published, because I had worked so hard, and I'd worked with editors, and I had done it right, and I was really proud of what I'd written. And I had no idea the changes that would come about in my life. No idea at all that I would be traveling the world, that I would be, given the opportunities I was given once the book was done. And I think that that's true. I've helped a bunch of other people finish memoirs and publish memoirs, and done some editing on other memoirs. And, it always starts the same way. I just want to leave this story for my family. And just recently, I helped a friend finish a memoir called Diary of a Dog Catcher. And she's worked in animal welfare her entire career. And, for somebody, the last 30 or 40 years of animal welfare have changed dramatically, and it's fascinating to read that. And a lot of us have animals in our houses that we got through rescue or, through different organizations. And, again, we live in a time of great change, and the history is told through people's lives. I don't want to read news reports endlessly. I want to hear about people's experiences. And I think, I think memoir is kind of like, it goes in the nonfiction pile, and nonfiction can be a genre that people aren't as interested in. And I think you write romance, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that that's a very popular genre. And my experience is authors kind of stick together, and I'm not saying it's easy, but you have an audience there that wants to see it, read it. And memoir seems dry compared to that. And that's why we have to write well, because we're competing, with other genres that are, I'll say more popular.
Yeah, well, I would say I just read a memoir about a woman who is a self-proclaimed sociopath, and that read like a novel. So memoirs can definitely read like novels, and I was just as caught up, if not more, caught up in her story because it was true and real to life and how she recovered from that. And so the way she wrote it was amazing and very good, and maybe the editing makes a big difference. But I will raise another point. What would you say to people that are worried about you talking or the author talking about other people and the risk that brings?
I found myself looking up online liability. And I always remember an Anne Lamott quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it as I say it, but Anne Lamott says, if people are going to be mad about what you write, well, then they should have treated you better in the first place. And I butchered the quote, but that's the feeling of it. And that really rung true for me. And it was, these are my experiences and I own them. Do I want to maliciously name call? No. The thing about memoir, I think that is, again, similar to what you write, is we curate the memoir. We don't tell you every single thing that happened every single day, all day long. And there's always a disclaimer in the front that says, this is my memory of what happened. And I'm not going to belligerently make things hard for people. And one of the things I did in my first memoir, I wrote about animals and I wrote about people. And when I wrote about people, I used their job.
Oh, okay.
And when I wrote about animals, I used their, and the job title meant that I didn't use anybody's direct name. There are things you have to be clear about, and it's just like using quotes or using music lyrics in a book. There are legal guidelines, and then you get to think about it. Um, if you want to write a tell-all, blistering, nasty book about an ex-husband, well, here's what I'm going to say. I personally, I've written a lot about ex-husbands, don't get me wrong. None of it's in a book. I understand the therapeutic value of writing that, but is that the message I want to give the world? And with my first book, the first editor who wrote it, do you want to put a message out that's filled with hate? Well, No. And I want to put a message out about, navigating past roadblocks in my life, which, by the way, I think is a plot you might use in one of your books. So, one more time, I don't see so much of a difference. And I'm still going to say, and you said this too, I think, that it comes back to writing the best prose you can write, no matter what genre you're in. And that takes me back. I know that the era of blogs has changed since I started, but every single week for 15 years, I've written a blog. I give myself an assignment: be humorous, be heartfelt, describe something that's hard to describe. Flower it all up, and it's like I have to say what I want to say in a brief period of time, and everybody leads busy lives, and nobody reads in the this is why at writers conferences they they talk about that first paragraph so much. Nobody reads. If you can't hook them right at the beginning, if you can't hook them through the first chapter, if you can't hook them through the second chapter, that's true of every single genre. And that takes us back to practicing writing until you're really feeling good about the words you use. And feeling like every word is the word you want to use.
That's a good message, because just learning your craft and challenging yourself in your craft can give you that much. I've taken so many different types of writing classes and learned different types of writing just to try to increase the quality of my writing. So that I even just writing your blog for yourself, that seems like it's a good tool to use to increase your not only your confidence, but how well you write.
I think writing is about finally telling the truth. And whether you do it in a children's story or a murder mystery, it still has to have that truth to it. And I will always maintain that our greatest strength as humans is our vulnerability, our ability to continue to be concerned, well, about animals, about children, about each other, about those that don't touch our lives and those that do touch our lives. How are we ever going to know that if we don't let ourselves be vulnerable? And I think for a lot of us, flip side as readers, I think that that's why so many people wrote me, is that they became more vulnerable because they read it. And I think about the self-therapy I have done over the course of my life reading great literature. I think, most of my mental health has come from reading. And so, yeah, I want to contribute to that. And I'm still going to say it's intimidating. I, to sit down and think, I am doing that thing that name 10 of your favorite authors did. How dare I? How dare I approach my keyboard when there are authors like that out there? Well, they don't know my story, and my story's related to their story. And women in particular have not been telling their stories as honestly and as honestly as they could. But I also want to say, it's only recently that we've gotten published that much at all. And your genre is a reason that more women are getting respect in the author world. But our voices have been missing in way too many conversations for hundreds of years. And I am now at an age where I'm no longer auditioning. And now I just think I deserve to be heard. And I think all authors deserve to be heard. But I really want to encourage women to tell their stories because it's the half of history that's missing.
There is so much to unpack in what you just said. I love that you talk about editing and maybe having an editor that will bring out those raw and vulnerable moments. And probably an editor you trust. You have to trust them, right? And they have to not just be a grammar word editor, but an editor that can help you shape the story and make it that vulnerable, beautiful novel, maybe in a storytelling way. So it is a little bit more attractive than, just this, I went to bed, I woke up, I rode a horse. But also I loved, and this is kind of a couple of questions back, that you talked about not just saying things for an expose, not just slandering someone, but about your transformation, the transformation that you underwent. And that was more of the story than the expose. So I love that. And I love the thought of voices. So all this, I think, is very inspiring to people. And I think people are going to look at you and say, this is wonderful. I can do it too.
We can make it as easy for ourselves or as hard for ourselves as we want. And the bottom line is to just pick up a pen and write. Just start. It's going to be lousy. And be courageous and do something you're going to suck at it first, because you got to suck at it for a while before you get to that rhythm of being able to write. And I think the wall of starting on one side looks like the Grand Canyon, and then you take the leap and you look back and it's a crack in the sidewalk. And so I just hope everybody, write your own memoir. You don't need to read mine. Go write your own.
Thank you for being here. This is the Cal Zone, and we've learned a lot. So hopefully everyone will find you in your memoir.
My books are available on my website, annablake.com. Can't be too hard to remember, but they're on Amazon and everywhere online.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Cal Zone, the official podcast of the Colorado Authors League, supporting and promoting its creative community since 1931. Learn more about us at coloradoauthors.org. This is a production of the nonprofit Colorado Authors League.